All right. Good morning, everybody, guys. Happy Saturday. Another week around the sun, which means it is time once again to let it rip. We have another powerful conversation for you guys this week with another special guest. But before we get there, a couple of things at the top. Guys, you know the routine by now. This show always does better when we hear from you. So, what I want you to do is wherever you are tuning in from this morning, I want you to head on over to the comment section and drop us a comment. Let us know where you are tuning in from, what questions you have along the way, what comments you want to throw in there, all that fun stuff. For now, that's it for me. I turn the reins over to the host with the most, Pastor TC. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Good morning. How's everyone doing? Good to have you guys. Good morning, everyone on all platforms, where you be Facebook, YouTube, wherever you're watching. We want to say good morning. Don't be rude. Say it back. I hope you're awake. You're ready for a powerful conversation. Today, we're talking about ministry across generations. So, if you look on the screen, we have multi generations on here. Okay, well, maybe not multi, but we have, at least three generations. Oh my goodness, can talk three generations on the screen for sure. And we're going to talk about a lot of different things. So if you're in the chat, feel free to engage. It's a powerful time to ask questions. Hopefully, we in the stream we talk about how to come together with all these different generations because with different generations come some differences on how things are done. And so that is the goal for the stream, hopefully. With that being said, I'd like to introduce someone that I don't think you guys seen on this side of ministry, JK. But you might have seen him on Monday Motivation. You might have heard about him working behind the scenes. A very passionate and very humble young man. I'm not saying that because he's a friend of mine, because I would say some other things, but we're on stream. I'm just playing. But a very kind dude, really cool young man. Why don't you take the time to introduce yourself, sir?
Yo, what up? Let it rip. Hello, I'm Kevon. Yeah, I've been a minister for a while. I've been doing ministry for a little bit. I think since I've been 13, 14. Been had the privilege to preach. Had the privilege to serve, and had the privilege to become a musician recently. And so it's been a fun journey just to be here. So I'm definitely glad to be welcomed on the stream. This is my first time doing something with Joe Day, so I'm excited.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, the streaming platform is it's a cool thing to do, and the podcast field, this environment, so it's really dope.
Yep. Yes, sir. Mr. Kevon Smith, very close friend of mine. Me and him worked at our time in Uplift, ministering to students in this powerful year. Really cool and humble dude. Okay, so with that being said and done, and we're definitely glad to have you. Let's go ahead and talk about this. So, the way I think I want to kick this off is not too spicy, but a little bit mild, with a little, with a little bit of pepper. Um, what are some challenges that you feel your generation has had to overcome overall? So I'll make this overall. And then if you want to, in this question, if you want to just go into how church has been for you as your generation overall, you go ahead and jump into that too. But again, how has your generation been overall? What are some challenges that you feel like your generation had to overcome that you're still overcoming, some things that hinder you? I want you to be thinking about that. So whoever feels free to just jump on in there, jump on in, the routine. I'll probably end up going last because I want to hear from you. Chat, you guys go whenever you feel like it. Just go on and jump in there because we definitely want to hear from you.
I think it'll be interesting to hear from Kavon.
Rock, paper, scissors.
Go ahead, man. Go ahead.
I was actually just gonna ask if you can repeat the question one more time, so I can.
Sure. So, where are some challenges that you feel like your generation is facing right now what are some hindrance that you think will hinder the next generation for us that has hindered the generation that's happening right now? Does that make sense?
Like in ministry, is that
I say
correct?
overall.
Okay.
But if you want to just go ahead and go in the direction of ministry, that's fine. But that's like overall, this is an inclusive conversation where we'll kind of bridge us to talking about ministry.
Okay.
So it's whatever you want to pick.
Okay. Yeah, this is an interesting one. So I would say being on the side of being with my peers in my age group or age gap, I guess, and then also being a teacher and watching the upcoming generation behind us, it's interesting, right? Because you get to see some of the things that we've started and how they're picking that up and perpetuating it, and then also kind of seeing some of the things of the generation in front of us and the things that they've put down that we've started to pick up as well. So I'll say some of the hindrances, definitely, the biggest one to me, in my perspective, in my realm, I feel like it's the issue of your, I guess, your morality or your philosophy, right?
Mm.
I think a lot of times there are rivaling um, motives and rivaling things that people believe and stand for, and it creates a huge gap where even at some point it gets pretty vicious, right? People can't be friends because of your political party, right? People can't even talk to each other because of now this new realm of sexual orientation, right?
Mm.
And I've seen how that does create a big rift, right, between who talks to who and who adapts to who. And so it is. I think that that's a hindrance, right? That agreement is something that can almost seem far fetched, I would say. I would also add that I also think that when it comes to um, when it does come to coming together with people, I think that I think we kind of use it a little bit. We call it cliquish, right? But I think that
Mm.
we have developed into this mindset of that I stay with my group and you stay with yours, right? I think that because of the different things that are kind of being established and going around, we do see people who um, tend to hang with a similar or like-minded people, right? And I think that that can be a good thing and also a bad thing because there's no gaps, there's no bridges being built, right? It's just only islands that continue to grow and to turn into whatever it does turn into, right? And so I think that for me, in my perspective, those are things that, in a general sense, that you can see that are pretty much hindrances as far as my generation and uh, with us coming together and agreeing with things.
Mm. Okay. Yeah, I definitely see that. Definitely smell where you're coming from on that.
Here's a question, Kevon, for your generation. Would you say that those stumbling blocks have a way of informing others on what your identity is? With how integrated the digital world is now with the real world, and I even struggled to say that word because for the generation coming behind us, you guys are the first ones that didn't or that grew up with a screen name, that don't have a time before that was a thing. And so do you think that as you go through and develop these opinions about these certain things, both in a church slash ministry context, but I guess in an everyday life context as well, that you have to deal with the burden of those things, those things acting almost like a billboard for what your identity is towards other people?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. I would agree. I think that it does kind of create because I feel like for some people this is an issue, but for other people it's a part of your diligence, right? But I think in this society, you have to be well versed on everything, right? You have to know what certain things are. You have to know different identity. So you just have to know and know how to engage and know how to conversate and know how to do that, right? And so because of that, there is this, I want to say, a pressure on yourself to like, hey, well, I need to know who I am just in case somebody asks me, right, or somebody wants to come at me for something, right? And it does sometimes, especially for people who who get into confrontations. You do have to be solid on, well, who are you, right? Um, I'll say even from a ministry, right? So I think that I've been able to see this, right? It's not necessarily with my generation, but I've been able to see, like, you have to know who you believe in, right? And so for some people, knowing Jesus is not something that they do, right? But they passionately argue and passionately stand by whoever they do believe by. If it's the Church of whatever to all the way to being Kojic, right? And so I think that there is a pressure of not only having that identity yourself and knowing what that is and being able to elaborate and to defend that. I think that people are starting to step into the realm of, well, I actually have to know about these other things so that I can rebuttal, so I can debunk, right, or I can
Mhm.
whatever it is. So I feel like in my realm, excuse me, it is a little bit combative, right? I need to know this, so whatever I have, I can up tier whatever is being coming at me.
That's good. That's good. All right. Jump on in there. Don't be shy. Chat. Wake it up. Wake it up. I know some of you might be lurking and chilling, but wake it up. Where are some challenges that you feel like your generation is facing? Some hurdles. Where are some things to overcome? Some things that are hindering your generation.
And why don't you go next so that way T and I can slide in there as the bridge point between the two of you guys.
I was trying to let y'all go next.
I knew you were.
Lay back, yeah, the challenges. I think that the major challenge for my generation is um, to recognize, actually not to recognize, to be open
Hmm.
to language differences,
Mm.
to um, uh, the world being so different. You mentioned earlier, Joe, that you know I grew up and we had pagers.
Oh my god.
We
Oh Lord. I
you
just
know
felt
I,
old saying.
I didn't have. I was actually one of the cool kids because I got a cell phone in like 97,
Was it the size of
98.
your head?
No,
Yo.
no, it was actually just a little bit bigger than the ones that we have now, but it was push. You had buttons.
Here we
Yeah.
go.
You know, you had to push the buttons on there. A little thing that I pulled up, and you know,
I remember when they had the retractable antennas. I do.
yeah. And so it was, yeah. And so now you have 8-year olds with iPhones. You know, like and usernames and all that kind of stuff, and there's a um just overall there's this want to say, hey, slow down, what are you guys doing, what are they doing over there, why are they and it's like, man, I think I've gotten old because everything is like, whoa, whoa, what are they doing, what, and you're always feeling like you're being stretched, you're
Hmm.
always feeling like you're being challenged, and you're trying to figure out how to navigate in a world where, you feel that challenge, you feel that stretching all the time because the generation younger than you, um, they don't see things the way you see them. They don't have the experiences that you've had, and they don't think that they should have to even have those experiences. They're like,
Hmm.
you know what? I'm not walking 100 miles to school, right? You know, barefooted with a 10-pound backpack on me, right? That kind of stuff. And
Crazy.
and I don't think that that's wrong. It's just,
Right.
we grew up in a time where I was watching a movie and they talked about, I think it was iRobot. I don't know if you guys ever watched that movie,
Oh
but in
yeah.
iRobot, the guy asked him. He said, "So would you, shut down the internet to keep the libraries open?" like let's just get rid of the internet and keep physical libraries so that you can only go and pull out physical books when I can push a button and get that book. I can and it's like, oh, it's that's the type of transition that we're in, that technology, um, how people view, I think, Kavan mentioned gender and, what that means anymore, because it doesn't mean what it meant when I was growing up. And so it's like, wow, okay, now I got to get used to this different way of communicating things. Um, Things that I say now have trauma or triggers,
Hmm.
like, what? That's just regular for me. But for someone in this generation, it's like, "Whoa, whoa, what are you trying to say?" And so it's like you're always trying to adapt, you're always trying to make sure you're not stepping on landmines because you never know. You never
Hmm.
know when you say something and somebody goes, "Yeah, see, there they go. Yeah, see, they're always on us." I'm like, well, man, what do I do?" So, yeah, it's I think that is the challenge, for this generation, my generation. And the generation older than me, I don't think they even care. They like, forget you guys, you. But my generation stuck kind of in a place where, well, we need to be able to communicate with the generation under. We need to be able to communicate, and so we still have to deal with trying to figure out what that looks like, and navigate how to make those points of reference and relevance. And so yeah, sometimes it could be, man, you're working hard, you know.
I hear you. I hear you. Let me get some comments real quick. We got Bay on YouTube. Today in this generation, it's not about what you know; it's all about what you believe. That's what I believe she is trying to say. Morality is not traditional; it's now being written or redefined. Um, yeah. What would you say to that, Kavan? Because I think I don't want to assume for her, but she's talking about the current generation right now that you're in. Um, do you think some of those things are true? Is there some truth to that, or is this overstretched? You know,
Um,
you ready, man? I'm just messing with you.
um, consider I know who made that comment, so I'm playing now. But I would agree. I would agree to a certain extent. To say that reality is being rewritten. I would agree to a point. I think that it's evolving, right? People are starting to elaborate more on terms that we've used. People are starting to. I like what Pastor said, but I guess I'll take it a different route. The trauma that when people say things that they're trauma, I think people are elaborating. Hey, that makes me feel a certain way, and so now we're creating terms and buzzwords
Mm,
to further elaborate what people are feeling, right? And I would say that it is being reshaped on how it used to be. Right. I just think that's where I say the extent that I would go is because it's all perspective, right? I think exactly how Apostle was saying it, and then exactly how my mom, hello mother,
that's real.
how she had commented on that. I think that's because that the perspective that you first have is your reality, right? And so when you start to move forward and you start to get to people who see a reality different and actually start to change and create a different reality, all of a sudden it's rewritten, or this is like outlandish, right? Well, I think that that's a part of the evolution that we all have to brace for, because we're all gonna continue to go up in age, right? Nobody's gonna get younger, so we do have to brace for it, even for us, right? I remember we used to talk about this all the time when we was working in the schools. We're like,
Mhm.
yeah, the kids now are worse than us, and everybody's saying that we were the worst generation, but these kids are
Jesus.
bold. They cuss
Right.
you out, like, you know what I mean.
Right.
So we had conversations like that, but it's for them. They're like, well, yeah, we're just gonna be more expressive because this is what y'all has said that we needed to start doing, right? And so it's the change
Mm.
perspective, right? And so that's where I when people say that, I'm like, what are they actually saying? Do they feel like
Yeah.
the Emancipation Proclamation? I think I said that right. Is that being rewritten? Right? Is
Right.
the Bill of Rights being written? No, but what is it's the perspective on how other people want to live is being stretched and it is being redefined to fit their comfortability.
All right. Yeah. I think I like what you're putting down. I'm trying to wait patiently. Joe, what's up, man? We rock, paper, scissors in this. You look like
Ha.
you're ready to go, brother.
Uh, so it's weird because I listen to a lot of different generations speak, and in some ways they're all saying the same thing. It's some other generation's fault, or
Mm,
some other generation isn't doing it right, or some other generation this, some other generation that. I not to pick on your mom's comments, um recalculating since that's your mom, because I would have otherwise referenced this differently. um I think coming at it and saying today in this generation is exactly how you shut down the conversation. I don't think you further the conversation by saying it like that. I think when you try and address another conversation, the best thing that you can do is try and put yourself into their shoes. What influenced them? What brought them to this point? What things have they had to go through that have shaped their perspective on this world? Because, guys, for Kevon being coming behind us, in a lot of ways, millennials crawled so that way y'all could run. Because before you guys were the problem, we
word the
were
problem.
the lazy ones who didn't want to work, who wanted to question everything, that just didn't understand, that were the ones that were rewriting what morality was, which is a subjective statement in and of itself. Morality is a thing that everybody creates for themselves. As Christians, we need to understand that the gameplay isn't morality. The gameplay is something entirely different, but that's a horse of an entirely different color.
Uh-oh.
But it is interesting because I think in certain ways the human experience endures. You can hear from different generations and say, hey, we're struggling with this idea of what we know has to be up to par because we are products of the information age, steeped in the information age. And so what you bring to the table from an intellectual standpoint matters more than at any other point really in history, because you can't just make stuff up, because everything can be fact checked, everything can be scrutinized. For us, it's still enduring this idea of we look different than the status quo. We look different than what is traditional in a lot of respects. According to the generation who came before us, guys that are T and I's age, we should be married, 2.5 kids, owning a home, in an established job that we've been working in for the last 40 years, and be able to retire, to all these things, where that world doesn't exist for us. Like it or not, have your opinions or not, whatever you want to do, whatever you want, but reality dictates that world is gone and has been for a minute.
Right.
So I think if we can understand and give a platform and a voice to say, hey, this is what's unique about my generation, while also giving room to say, hey, if I actually hear you, if I actually hear what you're going through, I can see that relation point where, that kind of looks like a different flavor of this concept that I had to walk through, or my generation has had to walk through. And in a lot of ways, I learned this from the older generation, because I jokingly say that I am a Gen Xer by proxy. I am a millennial by age range, but I was raised by my Gen X sister. I predominantly work with a bunch of Gen Xers. I speak the language very, very fluently. And listening to them and what they're struggling with trying to relate with millennials, realizing like, hey, they go through these things, and I too am going to pick on something that you said about the whole trauma thing. I don't think it's that the things that you're saying are creating trauma now. I think it's that we're actually talking about it. That's why the millennial generation was really was really a big step forward in being called soft and in our feels and all of that sort of stuff, because we express emotion in a way that wasn't seen before us, and that ball was taken and rolled with the next generation. That's why they are very open about talking about what has, and I think personally, and I'd love to hear your 2 cents on this, Kevon, but I think personally, as an observer of who's coming up behind us, who's old enough now to start to get your hands dirty, be a part of the process, really work at making the sausage, not just being shown how the sausage is made. Cool. I love that transition piece, because for far too long, those things went undiscussed. And if they were discussed, you were soft.
All right, man. Okay, so first off, good morning, Emmanuel. Manny, that's my dude. Sir, we are talking just about challenges that our generation is facing. So each generation, we have 3 generations on this screen. All of our struggles, differences, and challenges. That's what we're talking about right now in a very elaborate way. So there's a lot going on. Last but I guess not least is myself. I feel like Joe, you kind of said a lot that I was going to say. Yeah, I think growing up, the things that I see today from my youth, my peers, because Kevon's a peer, it's some of it is very fascinating, because it's like, I'm like you, Joe. I'm like, yes, they actually have the weight to carry it now. They're not going to get called crazy for saying, yeah, you can't call me a bundle of sticks because my voice is lighter. Call that out, because when we were younger, that was just, I'll try to be, about streams, so I gotta watch out, because that was a thing for us growing up. Speaking for the man department, a man with my voice, he was like, hey, how come you got more bass in your voice? It was just little things like that. I'm just picking on small things, right? That today is just unacceptable. You don't do that. You're called out. And I don't think that's necessarily trauma either. I just think that's, believe it or not, correction. Is that, that type of conduct and manner was never okay. And so it's amazing how this generation is so bold. And when it comes to me, for respect, and this might sound crazy, right? But this generation, you will respect them. I worked in schools long enough to know that when you were a 6th grade to 8th grade to high schooler, you will give me respect, or I will fight you for it. Versus my generation, we were disrespected and we have to be respectful. We might have bucked up a little bit, right? But we knew there was like a limit there. Because I don't know, maybe that old-fashioned morality of don't talk back to your parents kicked in a lot. But even then, I feel like we pushed it too, right? Because we was like,
speak for yourself. Rage Against the Machine was my anthem in the 90s. Come on. Speak for yourself.
No, I'm just saying, because you did. You was like, you ain't going to talk to me like that here. And so it's like that thing shaped. And now I think they're carrying it. And I like to celebrate that, right? Because I think it's so easy to discourage and say they're just crazy. These kids are just unhinged. They're just rebellious. And it's just like, no, I think they're saying something that we've been trying to say, and now they have more weight behind it, right? And so those are some of my things for my generation. Another thing, just pretty much like you talked about the expectation of society, right? That certain age means certain things. 30 years old, you better be trying to have some property owned, or at least supremely establishing your career, about to establish some property. And I was like, oh, like you were talking, I was laughing so hard in my head. I was like, man, yeah, you don't think we want that type of economy back? We don't want those scenarios back where we're able to get property, we're able to have the, I mean, come on, inflation. Look at the inflation. It's crazy because I'm like, they don't think that we want these things, right? But if you don't have these things, you're heavily scrutinized because that was the model. You went to school, right? You graduated from high school, you went to college, you became something with your life. That was the American module for our generation. And we said, there's no way we can do that. And they looked at us and said, yeah, you're crazy, right? And so now it's just fun. Like, I want to just pick on social media. There's people making multi-millions of dollars, never going to college. And Joe, it kind of messes me up sometimes because, like I said, I grew up in a generation where they say you need to go to college to make money. Yep. And people are not in college and they making millions of dollars. Some are in high school, not even done, making millions of dollars. So it makes you rethink the society pressures that came from the previous generation. However, I will say this, and this might be unpopular belief on the street. We'll see where this goes. I'm just going to take a risk and make this comment. I will say the older generation was needed for me because one thing I had the privilege of is having people always older than me. I think there's never been a real scenario where I didn't really have people who are older than me by 10 years. So I was always under someone older than me. And so with that came more maturity. With that came more of ability to communicate myself better. So I will say the old generation that I was under, I can say this globally, gave me an opportunity to express myself within parameters, right? And I think that's what I try to do with the generation underneath me is, okay, communicate what you feel, but within these parameters. You know, and what I mean by parameters is like, you want respect, so do I. I tell my students, I'm like, you can be upset, you can be angry, but you don't cuss me out. Well, what does that mean, mister? I'm not saying, and this is where people might disagree with me. I'm not saying you can't cuss. You can't cuss me out. Don't be raising your voice at me, talking crazy to me if you don't want to say response back. And that's, the culture that we established in our classroom when me and Kevon were working together is, okay, express yourself, but be respectful, and we'll respond back respectfully. So it really taught a lot. I think we had a class of young men. I think sixth grade was crazy because we had nothing but a young male class, and they were sixth graders. And those little jokers just came in there any type of way. And the whole year, we had to tell them how to communicate respectfully. And it was like a ballet between our generation, and I say not just mine, Kevon's, because he's older than them, and their generation, and trying to really connect these dots, and like, okay, yeah, we can't let you do that. That's just a no-go. But you know what? I might need to go home and change that because maybe I'm approaching this from a rigid place. And so I've had the privilege of kind of being in these spots. I think being an educator, influencer, or whatever you are on the screen, right? I think the various spaces for us pushes us to kind of adapt where we want to or not. I'm gonna go ahead and say, be safe and say, I know everyone on the screen that we want to, but I think generationally, that's what things get hard, is the willingness to adapt. For a younger generation, the adaptance of how someone used to think, and for someone older, adapting that this younger generation is going to think different than you. They're going to go at perspectives differently. They're not going to always choose your perspective first. They're going to lead with their fresh perspective because things are in front of them right now. I have a comment. Okay. I can't speak to my generation. I can only speak from my perspective. To my knowledge, I grew up around powerful young ministers, churches of 300 plus great word, non-denominational, Jesus, get together, bro. Church every day, revivals, etc. When I turned 10, the church fell on my eyes, right? Philmines, were open to notice that the church was losing a war at the time. Oh, okay. The church, I failed to open their minds. The church was losing a war at the time. Okay, that makes sense. If we get past ourselves, our selfishness, our desires, and trust that I can lean on God and not hustle the land by myself, a lot of us also were misled with the word from parents and preachers and etc. So let's go ahead and get into this. I was trying to, well, I guess I wasn't trying to break on this because I did want to talk about young ministers because we're talking about ministries across the generation. Um, Kevon's probably really familiar with this conversation because it's something that I'm low key very passionate about. So I can see your point first off, Emmanuel, is that yes, I do think there's some misleading on the word from parents and preachers that definitely have an impact on younger ministers. And I'm gonna go ahead and take another gamble. I say younger ministers are very wised up to that. They know instantly. I feel like me being a younger minister back then, there was more wool in my eyes, but more, I think because of the climate that they're in, they know, like, hey, that ain't right. That ain't cool. Why are we doing that? And being able to have those conversations, depending on what culture you're in and what church you're in, those conversations usually go south real quick because it's like, well, I'm older, you're younger. Who are you to tell me? And so I think I understand where you're coming from on that perspective. Um, yeah, I think we have conversations on this stream a lot about how generationally in the church there is this like weird disconnect. Me and Joe, I forgot how he dubs it, but it's pretty much, again, you become something in the church. You become a man of God. This is what a man of God looks like. You do X, Y, and Z. When you do X, Y, and Z, God does this. You should have this because this is what comes with being a minister. We've had those type of conversations on the stream before, in that pressure along with the American dream that's like, oh yeah, be something. You are meant to be something. And anything less than you owning something is ridiculous. And so, yeah, I think, again, course, your generation is definitely dealing with that. But what I really want to ask, and then I'm gonna work a little bit backwards. I'm gonna go to our 8 different ages, but I'm start young. Young ministers, come on, because you're a young minister. I think that's safe to say, right? I know you're a deacon in our church, but let's go ahead and talk about the pressures of a young minister. Let's go ahead and dive into, do you feel like young ministers are being pushed into ministry too young? Or do you feel like there's just not surges of it at all? They don't want it at all. They don't want it. Do you feel like they're being pushed in too quick, or they just don't want it? Because this is your age group. So I feel like this is where we might differ, because I know for me, I have my horror stories, but yours might be different. So I want to hear about that from your perspective. And also for you, Manny, because I know, go ahead and put that in the chat as well. If you're listening, go ahead and answer this question in the chat. If you're older, feel free to answer this question, because it's not just restricted, because I want to hear what the older generation has to say about this as well. Because I feel like there are going to be different varied opinions, which is going to be amazing. So go ahead, I'll let you go start it off, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think you had said something that I would disagree with to a certain extent. Um, I think that are there young ministers? Yes, right. I think now there's starting to become a bigger wave of younger ministers being called and accepting the call and stepping up to the plate and saying, "Hey, this is what I believe and this is what I want to do." So I would say that. At the same time, I don't think that everybody's catching the uh, the smoke and mirrors, right?
Ooh, okay.
Um, I would say that when I was young, I was continuing to learn, right? From my parents, from older ministers, pastors, deacons. I was just learning, right? And I learned a lot of stuff. And I feel like I see it today, but I'm not going to drop names. But, whenever you have somebody who's following somebody and, they watch closely on what they say and what they do. And when that person's doctrine is off, or they have a specific realm or a specific perspective on the word, that person, that younger person that's following that other minister picks up on that stuff and they repeat it, right? They're imitating, they're regurgitating the same things that they were fed and that they see, and that they continue to do that. And so I think that there has to be more of a movement that you do find that, hey, some of this stuff is wrong, right? I'll say for me personally, I have to have conversations with people that are my age that says the same things that older men and women say, or your parents say, right? Where it's just like, okay, well, where do you get that? Where did you hear that? Because I mean, not being petty, but you're not finding it in the Word of God, right? So where did you hear that? Because that's where you got it from. You heard it from somebody else saying that, and then they will say this is the Word of God, right? I think a lot of times, especially when you're younger, you don't ask enough questions, right? If you ask questions to begin with, and so you kind of just take the word because of the respect and the reverence of these people that you are sitting with and you are talking and trying to learn from. Um, but I would say, to go to your original question, um, I think that for young ministers, it is a interesting deal, because I do not feel like they're being pushed into ministry. In my perspective, I feel like they're being held out until it's appropriate time for them to flourish, if you will.
Mm.
Even to a point where some are being held back, where their time is actually prime, but they're like, hey, well, I have this stuff, and I think that I still have more time on this, or I don't feel like you're ready, and I feel like when I get ready, that's the appropriate time to do so,
Mm.
right? Um, not to say that this is everybody, but I've seen this with other younger ministers. I remember there's this one church that I visited, and we were about the same age, right? And we were almost on the same path, right? At that time, he was getting catechized. For people who don't know, catechized is, that's the process of being ordained, and so they always have it for different realms. So if you're going to be catechized as a deacon, or as a minister, or even as a pastor, right? And so for some churches, for older churches, they just have that process for each one. And I remember we were doing the same thing, but I had finished mine uh, ahead of his, and this guy was saying that, yeah, well, I haven't even started half the stuff that you're doing now. Like, I'm still just sitting with him, right? And so I feel
Mm.
like, man, like, well, what's the holdup? I mean, even in my personal testimony, I feel like, man, I've done a whole bunch of stuff. Um, Not to say like I'm ready to pastor a whole church right now, but man, I've gone through so many different studies. I've been catechized multiple times, where I've been ordained as a minister, been ordained as a deacon, and in any of other places. I've gone through pastoral training, the study, doing all this other stuff. I've gone through a whole bunch of things, and I feel like it is a slow down. Now I realize the Lord is saying, hey, no, this is not the time. But before, I'm like, well, what's the holdup, right? It's y'all saying things need to get done. You always hear older people complain about there's no youth, and that the youth need to do things. And so I feel like it's
Mm.
like, well, you have no excuse right now. It's like, I'm right here. Let's get work done. So that's what my perspective was now. And this is like I don't know if this is a personal beef, but I feel like the only time you get youth involved is to either quote unquote save them, or you have them speaking to just younger kids, or like younger kids than them, right? And so, like, for somebody who's 18, oh, well, you're a strong, powerful young man, you need to be speaking to the youth. Well, okay, sure. Like, but that's the only place that they have them, right? Where there's young people that have words that can touch plenty of people beyond the youth, right? Not to say that that's an issue, but it's like that's where I feel like they're just being held there and held there, right?
Mm.
Where you have maybe 24-year-olds. Why are you still preaching to the youth, right? Why aren't you preaching to people who are your age? Why aren't you
Mm.
speaking and connecting with people older than you, right? Because your voice is changing, and I guess the fresher perspective is needed for the older generation to hear as well. And so it's like, why is it always? I feel like, in my personal opinion, once you hit 30, then you're allowed to really interact with the older people when it comes to ministry for men.
Oh man,
It's a fundamentally false statement. Come on.
Exactly.
I'm sorry, but that's a fundamentally false.
I'll touch on it in a second.
Yeah.
But I want to say real quick to clarify my statement is because the reason why I said this comment is because of you, and maybe that's very small to narrow down my world to one person. But I feel like I met more people like you. I have one email in the chat right now that the wising up. Because when I say young, I'm talking about let's go ahead and just range high school to college ages, right? Where the feeling of the only time they want to use me is to be seen. I think Manny is saying this. I'm about to read his comments in a second. But yeah, exactly what you're saying. Yeah, you got to give. Go ahead, minister to the youth. So, like a shining object. And I think your age group is waking up and saying, that's not right. I'm more than just an object. So that's the point I'm making. As far as the moralities part of it and what you learn, I agree. I still think though I ain't trying to be like this. The wool is still heavy over the eyes. It's still because you just see because no one's taking the time to slow down and teach. They're just saying do this right and figure it out. And so I still think that is definitely heavily present. So I do want to say I agree with that, but I just want to clarify my point real quick. And I know I haven't heard from Ant yet, so I want to hear. Because you said a lot, Kevon, that I definitely want to hear how these two gentlemen on top feel about it. So first off, it feels depends on the person. For the one who needs guidance, step up and guide them to a lot of the older generation. Is a lot of the older generation is a figure it out for yourself type, or let them struggle. And oof. Man, join the club, brother. That's what I'm gonna say. It's not just your generation, my generation. To be honest with you, this is where I think all generation on the screen could kind of really come together. Because it's not. I just love this. I love these type of statements because you figure that the generations are really similar when it comes to this approach with someone before them. We can't ask questions either. Wait, I actually missed a comment. Before social media has been, this is Terry. By the way, hello, sir. How you doing? Before social media, things have been the same all generations. One to be respected, how to achieve. That has been changed. Let's keep it perspective. Sinful reaches. Let's keep it in perspective. Sinful reaches us all. I'm not going to deny or reject that comment because I think there's some valid truth to this. Because I think every generation is going to always be in this plight. But yeah, I would like to know more. So definitely keep commenting. Because I think that's a good point that you're bringing to the table. We can't ask questions after we can't ask questions either, Kevon. I think when you were talking, he was making a statement. We have to be seen and not heard, and this is what I was talking about. Is there's still this attitude is still very heavy, in churches, unfortunately, and so I want to say I do agree that pastors are not going to give you their platform; they want you to get your own. What do I do with this? I'm gonna go ahead and say this is true, and that's the problem. This is a very true statement, and this is the problem because if we're making preaching a platform, then we're already in trouble. We already missed it. So I don't want to get too heavy on that because I already know we're going to touch that. Someone's going to touch that. For me, I don't want to get caught on a tangent because that will go into ages competing against each other. The idea of being relevant because you're older and being younger, trying to make a name for yourself, right? And there's just so much in that, right? There's jealousy and competition, and that is a hindrance. That is a real thing happening right now. Man, I agree. Y'all hold on to that call. I already saw y'all faces, so I'm just gonna read these comments and I'm just turning this back over to y'all. I could feel the wheels turning. I agree. We are used till they want was to be seen. It hurts because then you battle, is it me wanting to be seen, or am I trying to glorify God? Absolutely. That creates the crisis automatically. Especially and I'm only speaking from my experience, not to be racial, but I feel like that's the experience I had being African American churches. Joe, I'm pretty sure it might be the same sentiment, but I know that was really heavy. Is that the be seen thing, and then if I'm saying too much, oh yeah, you being arrogant because you trying to glorify yourself, and then there's this crisis on the inside of, well, am I glorifying God or am I glorifying myself? I think I'm glorifying God. I'm doing what they said to do, what they did, but now that's the whole competition thing. And some of that, and to be fair, some of that can also be humility. I have plenty conversations with young men about humility. Kevon being one. I'm always leading with humility because I myself, as a man of God, is always leading with humility. My peer above me, which is above my head, literally, my pastor, is always leading with humility. So humility is a universal concept when I teach younger men, period. But yeah, I do think there's a lot of quote unquote gatekeeping because of this philosophy. Last comment. And I want you guys to keep these comments. The chat's going crazy. I love it. The ministry is a dedicated and delicate thing to navigate. You must tread carefully because you can possibly get derailed. That's why we had Jim Jones, David Korsh, and so on. And yeah, I agree that the ministry role can be delicate to navigate, and we should tread carefully. I agree with these statements. Again, I have no disagreements. I just will say we will have to be careful. My boy JL up in the place. What's up, Bishop? He said there's a danger in being addicted. I'm loving this. The chat's going crazy. There's a danger in being addicted to the pulpit and allergic to the altar.
Allergic
to the altar. Sorry, I said it wrong. My boy poetic, but anyways, the danger of being addicted to the pulpit and allergic to the altar. Want to be seen rather than seen serving is a dangerous demeanor. Anytime we elevate ourselves ahead of God's timing, only exposes how we miss the moment of every time. Can I pick at this comment, and then I'm just going to turn it over to you guys. I want to say the dot of moving on God's timing. Of course, that's what we desire. We desire to be in line with God. We desire to be at His feet, to seek after Him. But I will say, I feel like these type of statements are used against young people a lot. That is not your timing. How do you know that? It's going to be a little controversial. How do you know? Are you saying that because of age? Or is there actually a component that suggests they're not ready? I feel like there's not a lot of clarifying when these type of questions or statements are made. It's just, don't go before your time. Well, okay, I get what you're saying, but where's the motive? I really want to challenge the motive behind these statements. Okay, where's God in all of this? We know God has chosen many youth, and we must underline chosen, not choosing yourself, or man choosing. Generations trying to correct previous generations, teaching pridefulness. Woo! Okay, this chat's on fire. All right, I'm gonna shut my mouth now because y'all have gone a lot. So I don't know who want to jump in here. Y'all got to do some rock paper scissors and do something because.
And go ahead, because once I go, I'm going into my weekly session of being the show's heat magnet. So go for it.
Go ahead.
Yeah, there's a lot here, and I was gonna let this go, but then after seeing the comments, it's like, you know what? I think these things connect. Um, but earlier when I expressed about being a part of a generation that that has caused trauma and triggered trauma. I think Joe said, "Well, no, we're just talking about it." And I said, "No, I looking at this, I think my generation has caused this, has created these distressing and difficult experiences that are being brought up here. I think, you know, being a part of that generation, like TC was saying, suck it up, do the, we, and I want to, for me, because I have, children that are 25 and 20 or 20, about to be 26 and 28. And I've heard what they had to say, that some of the things that, we did thinking we were doing the right thing was causing counseling hours, you know, causing them to have to sit down and work through some stuff because of some of the things that we said and we did. And so when I look at these comments, I say, you know what, this is it. This is the struggle for power, the struggle for significance, the struggle for position, the struggle for validation. There's a struggle, and you have a generation struggling against another generation, and then you have the perspective. I will say that I like what Joe had to say about each generation pointing to the other
Right.
instead of understanding that, no, I'm creating this for them. They have to say, they have to understand what they're doing to the other. And so to say, well, they're doing this. No, what am I doing? What am I causing? you know, for them because of my perspective, and I'm unwilling to see it from their perspective. And so, looking at these comments, and I'll try to make it short because there's so much that has been
Oh, you're
said.
fine,
I'm
man. Take
sitting
your
here
time.
watching this,
Take
like,
your time.
man, there's so much being said, and trying to boil this down or summarize it into something that can make sense is that there has been misrepresentation of some things that were supposed to be done were done in ways that created more problems instead of, creating a path. I think one of the original questions that were asked was, and I'm trying to remember how it was worded. Was it, uh, did the younger generation, I think this is posed to Kavan, did the younger generation feel like they were being pushed into ministry or
Yeah.
held out? What? And I felt like there was a third. I felt like there was a third option there, um, that they were being monitored and controlled. You
Ooh.
know, uh, and that's bad too. That I'm going to make you go at a pace that I'm comfortable at. I'm
Ooh.
going to keep you in a pace. I'm not going to hold you out, but I'm not going to let you go. But I'm going to make it comfortable for me
Oh God.
instead of taking the reins off and saying, okay, let's work together. Let's see what happens when we just do this thing together. And I hear what you have to say, you hear what I have to say, and we work together. Because I think all these I think comments show that there is a power struggle, right? That there's one generation, trying to tell another generation that you're not ready, and the other generation saying, "Well, who are you to tell me I'm not ready?" You know, then another generation telling them, "Hey, you need to pull yourself up by your bootstraps and learn on your own because that's what we had to do." And and all that stuff that I felt like, and I feel like now when I'm listening to it, I'm like, man, this is why people are messed up. This is why people have all these problems, is because we don't know how to let people be, walk beside people and say, okay, this relationship's going to be what it's going to be. And I say that because I'm sitting on here with individuals that every one of you, we have had disagreements. Every one of you, we have had different perspectives. Yet somehow we move forward. Yet somehow we keep, we maintain connection and we do ministry together. Whether it is digital ministry, whether it is in a church setting or whatever it is, we find a way to do ministry, and we do it that way because we're willing to say, let me think about what you just said, right? And work through it and then come back with my questions so I can get clarification and understanding. And then let's have that conversation again under different, whereas a lot of times there was this shut it down. You don't talk to us like that. You don't do that, and it's like, okay, how do we move forward? How do we understand each other? Or the opposite, you know what? You don't hear me, so I'm not going to talk to you. And so I think this multi-generational conversation is interesting, and I think it needs to be had more on the level of everybody being truthful, even if there's a possibility that what they're saying could be taken the wrong way, and then ask questions. So what do you mean by that? That is has been my constant demeanor. When I hear something, I'm like, okay, before I jump on this, let me ask, what do you mean by that? Let's unpack that some more, because we can get into, saying things, and this is what I hear you saying. Well, I didn't know you were hearing me say that, and that's not what I was saying, you know? Or actually, that's what I was saying. Why do you have a problem with that? Let's talk about that. So I think this is a great opportunity to have this conversation, and I'm glad people are chiming in, and just keep chiming in, keep throwing them in there, because it kind of lays out what I would say, the breadcrumbs to follow and have this conversation, and do it in a way that, hey, now we're starting to see inside what's going on, the stuff that's not being said. We need those things said.
Real quick before you get to those comments, Joe and Pastor, that was I think I totally agree. Um, It's at two. The struggle has always been since the exception between Isaac and Ishmael. Trauma came from trauma, and so on and so on. I smell where you're coming from with this. Is that it perpetuates. So the previous generation's traumas come to the current generation's trauma, and so forth and on. And I think this is why these conversations are important to have, because we want to put an end to those type of things, right? We or at least try to put our foot in the best foot forward, like Pastor was saying, going in the right direction, having conversations at least, because that's the biggest challenge, is at least having a conversation.
Can I say one more thing real quick? Just
Go for it.
real quick, because it just popped into my mind, because I told you there was just so much there, and I was like, there's something that I really wanted to talk about, the platform piece. So I just wanna address that really quick, because I think it there's some truth to it in the larger sense, right?
Mhm.
But when someone tries to, and I'm gonna use a word that's gonna sound really weird in this context, right?
Mhm.
And I learned this word from a seminar, and it's sponsorship, right? There's mentorship and sponsorship. We would say discipleship, right? Not necessarily mentorship. But sponsorship is where you use your name, your platform, your influence, your to help somebody else along. To say, you know what? And Paul would do this with Timothy. He would say, I'm sending you Timothy, my son in the faith. Treat him as if it's me. Basically, he's saying, don't discount him just because you don't know him. And I feel like a lot of times people won't do that. They
Mm.
they they won't say, "Well, I'm gonna vouch for this person. I'm gonna put myself out there and say, hey, this person's a good guy," you know? And sometimes people don't like that for whatever reason. You know, I think I think all of us, we had the conversation about bringing Kevon on. Everybody vouched for him. Said,
Yep.
"Bring him on. He's gonna be good." Why is that so hard? Why is there this idea that, well, yeah, I don't think they're ready. I don't think that, but what if you do know them? Why not put in a good word for them? Why not give them an opportunity? Why not, you know, because it's not about you anyway. It's not my platform, right? It's not my pulpit. It's not my anything, right? So why is there this idea of I have to, you know, give them my platform? It's not my platform. It's not. It's God's platform. It's what He desires. So bring people on, bring people in, let people have opportunities, and see what God is doing with them. Because especially multi generational. Because I think you said it earlier. There's things that your generation understands, that as long as we have been living, you have a better handle on it than we do.
Right.
And so to look to you and say, you know what, let him talk, not just to the little kids, but he needs to talk to the adults. He needs to talk to the wider audience because, that's what I'm saying.
Joe, go
Okay.
ahead, because I got a lot to say about that platform piece.
So
you're doing so good.
Unfortunately, though, there's so many different plot threads that have been brought up because this tends to be a conversation that tends to be an open vessel for other gripes and other issues to get poured into. Before I go on my piece, Kevon, I have a question for you. Do you plan on going to seminary?
It's a desire. I would like to.
Okay.
So yes, to answer that, yeah.
Okay. So Kevon, if you didn't know this already, there tends to be a part in every single week where I tend to be a heat magnet, because I have a unique perspective a lot of the time. I think in certain ways, the context of being immersed in church culture, being immersed in your situation, in your circumstance, in your thoughts, is vibrantly on display for the rest of the panelists that I am joined by today.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, part of what you guys are talking about isn't an age issue. It is a system issue. And I'm going to push back on you pushing on me, Ant. You guys played out of a playbook that was written for you. Millennials, in a large way, were a generation, and I'm not saying we were the first, I'm not saying we were the only, I'm not saying any of that sort of stuff. I'm just stating in the pantheon of generations, in the legacy that is human existence, we are a generation who took a playbook and in some ways rejected it. In large and sweeping ways, rejected it. That was passed to us. Part of why I say we talk about it is most Gen Xers were not raised to speak out about what they were doing. It's not that you guys were the ones that were like, sure, there are plenty of Gen Xers who have caused trauma, but that trauma was inherited by them, and that trauma was given by boomers who also inherited it. So it's not a matter of we are the generation that caused the trauma. I think that's short-sighted. Yes, we should take a look at what we bring to the table, but that's different than saying, what did my generation do? Because if we don't look at the grand scope and the grand scheme of things, we will always be running into the same exact buzzsaw. The conversation went here, there, and everywhere before I had a chance to comment on it. But when you start to talk about the whole seen and not heard thing, and Kevon, you said the whole 30-year-old piece, and I immediately had a reaction to that, because as the dude who was breaking into the industry around 30, no seminary training, no commitment to a denomination, I wasn't taken seriously. Some people hear me and they hear the way that I can speak, and they hear the gravity of what I have to say, and the fact that I know how to turn it up. I know when to go there. I know when to be larger than life, and I know how to present myself as such. That tends to distract people from the fact that I've only been in the ministry for about 5 years. And to some people, that's a really big deal. And to some people, that is immediately disqualifying, and in some ways puts me in the same category as some of you younger folk that are coming behind us and saying, like, we want our shot, we want our opportunity, and things like that. But the problem is not only, I'm not saying it's not an age thing at all, but there is a system in place that to your point, when you said about the perspective of being an African-American male in an African-American church and all of that, I'm certain that there are certain aspects and pieces to your puzzle that are directly affected by that situation, by that circumstance, by that perspective, by all of that. Mm-hmm. However, you're touching on the larger picture of, you go to seminary, you get ripped out of the context of being in the community. Mm-hmm. You are pulled out to be trained, racking up thousands of dollars in debt. And now you're part of the rat race because now you've got all of this debt. You've got the same debt as essentially somebody who's gone for their master's. Mm. And now you got to get a job in order to start paying off that debt because those creditors are going to come calling right quick. Mm. And so you're like, okay, what do I need to do to get a job? So the process starts. You enter into a church. You start in a church working with predominantly kids, and then maybe when they've got a spot on a roster for randomly, you might get a call up to the minor leagues to start preaching on every fifth Sunday, and then maybe once you find a home in the minor leagues, somebody's retiring, so everybody's waiting on bated breath. So that way, guys, I understand I sound cynical, but the reality is, in ministry, there is an intrinsic comparison to be made with the restaurant business. Why do you think for years, for time immemorial, chefs were at each other's throats? Because there's only so many full-time spots on the roster. That's just the reality of the restaurant business. Mm. So everybody's fighting for full-time. Everybody's fighting for their shot. Everybody's willing to cut each other's throats in order to get there. We hope that that's not the deal with ministry, but that's the deal with ministry. That's why so many of us that see this thing differently, what did Ant do? Ant went and planted his own friggin' church. He's a story. He is a statistic in certain regards. And I hate to be like that, but that's the reality for a lot of us in ministry that see it a certain way. We are told, because you see it differently, go plant your own thing. Nobody talks about the trauma that comes along with planting your own church, especially if that thing goes sideways, and all of the nonsense and heartache and grind and blood and sweat and tears that go into trying to actually start something that isn't just born out of, I feel a necessity to do this. So unfortunately, there's nothing new under the sun. So unfortunately, you have young people who are incredibly talented. That they have a gift for being able to communicate things, to be able to give ideas, to give a different perspective that says, hey, here's this eternal truth, but here's this eternal truth from the perspective who's from somebody who's in their mid 20s.
Not even mid.
So that that's an entirely different perspective that unfortunately. An aspect of the conversation is that mid-20s, you don't have enough seasoning. And don't get me wrong, I hear, as somebody who's prone to being disgruntled at the system, I hear some of that disgruntled nature in your voice. And I'm like, oh yeah, okay, cool. And you're in a great spot to be able to get the seasoning that you need to couple with that disgruntled nature, so that way you don't run popping off at everybody who pisses you off. I've been there. I'm still working on that. But I think, but part of why I say what I say, and part of why I try to bring this conversation into it, is when we get wrapped up in, oh, that generation doesn't want to give up their platform. Well, neither did the generation before them or the generation before them. It's the idea that it has to look a certain way. That you have to be the pastor of a church in order for it to look a certain way. You have to be a typical archetype of what the system says that it is in order to be taken seriously. And that touches on something that unfortunately different generations get exposed to in different ways, but is so deep-seated that even the most godly, trusted ministers of the faith struggle with, this is what it's supposed to look like. This is what it should look like. Somebody should be having that, all of that kind of stuff. Whereas, you know what? In some ways, you learn by falling on your face. Our generation, T, I think, if anything, if early estimates from a 35-year-old dude, that some people would argue we haven't even hit the middle age section of our lives yet. I think when the history books look back at millennials, we will be told that it will read that we overcorrected. We grabbed that wheel away from Gen Xers and away from baby boomers, and we jerked that wheel hard to the other side, to the point where we didn't want to see people fall and skin their knees. We didn't want to see people get hurt. We didn't want to see people go through trauma, and so we protected them from that, for better and for worse, I am sure.
Right.
But okay, so let's say there's an opening tomorrow. And Kevon gets pushed out into in front of the spotlight. Has he been trained to be able to handle that? And I'm using you as the example for this, Kevon, because you're the youngest one in the room. Has he been trained to do that? Can he handle that? If the answer is no, okay, then don't push him into the spotlight. But anybody who has been tasked with training him, why is he not? That's the question that you have to start asking then, is why has he not been trained if he's not? And if he is, then push him out in the thing. I mean, if he, don't, so he falls and he gives a bad sermon. Okay, I know 50-year-olds who get in front of the pulpit and give crappy sermons or get heretical or just start spouting off nonsense. So what's the difference if a 20-something's doing it?
Yeah, I want to jump in.
Yeah, go
Quick.
ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
I didn't want to cut you off, Joe.
No, you good.
I agree. I think that there is a system that is at play here, right? And I think I don't want to separate or divide or conquer and divide, but I think that it's just the reality that different denominations and different demographics have a different system, but there is a unison line, right? I think that I think if talking with TC and Apostle Anthony, that certain black churches, there is a certain kind of a way of how they do things and how they raise up ministers, right? And I have never experienced a different, white church or a different type of church, and so I don't know what that process looks like. But I would say for growing up for us, right, especially Baptists, right, it is, you do have to go through this line, and basically I like what you said, Joe, that you are basically just waiting for the head or the senior pastor to put it down, and then whoever's up, right, it's now it's free agency. Hey, which one is best fit, right? And so I do agree with that unfortunately that's what it looks like in the black church specifically. And it's not always like that, but most of the times you do see that. Man, I remember there's a church that I've seen that they had a row of 10 different ministers, and the senior pastor was still holding on, and it got to a point where they all left and started their own churches. And then by the time that senior pastor was ready to retire or put it down, he had nobody, because they were waiting for years and years and years, and they're like, why do I gotta wait for this when I could just go do what he's doing, right? I would agree. I think that, when I made my statement about, the 30-year-old, obviously I was inflating a little bit, but I think that you do see opportunities for younger people but it's always so constrict until like you were saying, hey, until this guy is ready to put it down, the guy at the top, the guy who's leading and who has the reins, until he's ready, we're just gonna keep him there, right? We're gonna wait him out until he makes his decision instead of, hey, well, I'm not the only one who's called. I'm not the only one who's equipped with a word. There's people here that God has called, right? And so letting them have an opportunity, and what Apostle Anthony said, that yeah, there's certain things that I can say that somebody else can elaborate way better than what I can, that can reach people and even in some cases even more than what I could say. So I definitely agree. I think that there's a piece though. Um, I guess maybe this, I think Apostle said it, but the piece about the trauma, right? I think when it comes to church trauma, a lot of it is I'm not being heard and I'm not being seen, right? And or however you would like to put that. And so when it comes to ministers, that's usually the biggest alt, right? And it's like I'm not being used enough, or I'm not allowed to have different opportunities, or y'all just don't care. I'm on the back burner while everybody else gets it. And so that's usually like a consistent complaint that a lot of different younger ministers or just ministers in general have, right? And so I think if there's a way for them to get a piece or something where they can utilize what they've been given, right, what they've been blessed with, then that's I guess that's the problem, right? Because it's not well balanced, right? It's just heavy on who is prepared, right? And then to what Joe was saying at the end, a lot of the times by the time it is time for somebody else to take the reins, not everybody's properly equipped, right? Because you've been having the training wheels on for so long and not really pouring in what you should be pouring into, or not walking with the people that you should be walking into. Hey, you're just gonna have to fumble through and figure it out, right? That's what I had to do, and that's how. But no, that's like what is this? You know what I mean? This is not sports. That's not how it's supposed to be. It should be equal amount of pouring.
Sports
Hey,
that wasn't being tolerable either.
right. That's exactly. And
Mhm.
so it's like, well, let's pour everything that I've received. I'm gonna give it to you. And so when we continue to walk, as we continue to develop, you are you have the full grasp and the full perspective of what this looks like. So by the time you get there, it's not a foreign concept to you. And I think that that's the problem that a lot of different churches
Yeah.
and different organizations have, right? It is a corporation ran like, hey, it's the next man up and best available, but at the same time,
Yep.
you're not equipping them properly to for that moment that they may get.
Man,
Can I just one little thing on off of what Kevon said. One thing that I hope becomes clear to anybody watching this. Yes, again, I said it before and I'll say it again. There are aspects and idiosyncrasies that are, I am sure, specific. But there is a core fundamental theme that transcends the different church aspects and situations, because there are things that you're experiencing at your age, Kevon, that are very real in white churches, or very real in multi-ethnic churches,
I believe
or very real in different denominations and different things like that. I too can speak for seeing how this thing plays out in a Baptist context. That this is one that seminary piece and that proper credentialing piece is a very real thing. And then you start to, when you consider that nugget, how many people that, even though they wouldn't call themselves a Baptist, are influenced by SBC flavored theology or church experience or things like that, are without realizing it also taking in those biases based off of experience or age or not having the right education or different things like that. And so that's why it's so important to look at the big picture as far as all of this goes, because I think that's where we can start to articulate things that can really help across generations.
Yeah. I'm gonna read this comment. The comment section was going crazy. Bay and Terry are killing it, and I love it. By all means, continue to comment. Aaron, good morning as well. This is where helping those who are called in to pastor a church come in, helping church planning. There, yes, but I have so much to say. So it's not, but I'm not saying you're wrong, because there was a lot of information thrown out. So I think I'm gonna try to do the best I can to express what I'm feeling in a sense. So to Ant's point, I think he covered a third option that I thought was very, very powerful. That I think if I had to sum it up, yeah, you're right. This won't change until Christ comes back. I agree, but I think what I hope we can do in the last couple minutes of the stream is really come up with effective solutions. He talked about the third option, which is someone who is responsible for you controlling the time instead of letting God dictate the time. To me, those are two big different things. And yeah, I think to Joe's point about millennials taking the wheel and saying, because of the excessive abuse and trauma, we're going to make a difference. We're going to draw this line in the sand because we don't want to let people experience what we experience. I agree, for better or for worse, because that's literally the extremes, right? Is, and I don't know, maybe it's wrong to say I don't think I would have it any other way. It's because you want change for yourself, and you want change for those behind you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we did have to fight to be heard. And that's why it's hard, because I feel like we're right in the middle of this bridge. Millennials are, and I was like, the whole stream, like thinking, like, man, is that wrong to say? But it's the truth. Is that we're like this the middle section.
Yep.
We're having to undo things and create a new path, but at the same time teach both generations. So we had to say, hey, stuff that you were laying down wasn't effective, didn't work, caused us more unnecessary pain. To the generation before us, or after us, excuse me, hey, this is what you want to watch out for.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead and take this and do something with it. I think that's what my life is, because I remember when I was Kevon's age, feeling like, I'm going to use poetic language right here, so forgive me in advance, Joe. Feeling like the very oil is seeping through me because I'm not being used the way I know God wants to use me, because the people who are above me are just keeping me there. I know. I can see you right now. I do to you. I have to get one per stream. I didn't get one per stream. I have to do it to you. But the point I'm making is the burning of God's passion and the calling that He was calling me to do. I knew it, and people were gatekeeping me.
Mm-hmm.
And it was hard, which caused me to do a lot of things that Ant said. Well, I'll just do it myself. I'll just go start it myself.
Yep.
Because why not? And this didn't extend this to ministry. This is like life stuff. I had friends who were like, because no one wants to show me how to date a woman, I'll just go do it myself. And then had the nerve to scrutinize them because they have 4 or 5 kids before their time, quote unquote, because the whole time they were asking for help, no one wanted to help them. But very quick to say what their conditions were. I would like to really see what the Bible talks about when it comes to this marriage between the younger and older generation. The Bible talks about the relevance of both.
Mm-hmm.
Paul talks about not letting no one despise your youth. He's speaking to Timothy. Timothy is in charge of this church. He's a pastor of this church. And I just think it's so crazy. Paul is encouraging his son in the spirit to not only take affirmation and courage in this, but to understand that people are going to do this to him. So for someone to say, let no one, that means someone's going to. And I wish sometimes we can get the more, how can I word this, expository forms of the Bible where we explore more on how those relationships were with Timothy. I wonder how it was for Timothy to say, yeah, you can't do that. And I wonder how those interactions were for someone who were older than him. You know, but at the same time, you have older people being wise and sober. Because this is the part where I feel like, man, if there's a robbery in teaching, we always see people say, I'm older, so listen to me. I'm older, so I know what I'm talking about. But the Bible says that older men are supposed to be sober. And I'm not just talking about drinking, but mature. This is coming in that spot, man, because I'm kind of going through this. I can't say I have a lot of older, mature men around me. I have only one on the screen. And I was talking to him about this, saying, should I be okay with that? Is that just the fate that I should accept for my life? Is that there's not an example of older men who set actually positive examples? They're not just saying, do this and figure it out. Should I accept the scandal and the falling of older men? Or is there an expectation I should be looking for? Because I've been burned. It got me thinking, well, maybe I should look to the older generation. Because either they're going to tell me I don't know what I'm talking about, or they're going to be caught in some kind of craziness and then tell me not to say nothing. Is this all I have to look forward to? Mm-hmm. Because I'll go ahead and be the one scandalous to say it. The younger generation is always looking for the older generation. They're not looking to always rebel against it. They're looking to have guidance from it.
Can I piggyback that? Can I grab that ball off you and put some seasoning on that?
Go ahead.
Look, for somebody like me, who I am a pastor that barely holds on to the confines of organized religion. I am somebody who is anti-establishment in a lot of different ways, for better and for worse. At the heart of every person, even the most anti-establishment of us all, is a deep desire to be known and to be told by somebody who has walked the path before you, look, sometimes it's hell getting to heaven and you'll be all right. That is a fundamental core thing. Not everybody is emotionally aware enough to say that. Not everybody is emotionally intelligent enough to be able to say that. But what this man is saying rings true, regardless of where you land on your actual experience of what has been given to you.
Yeah, man, because
Can I take the other side of that?
I'll you go for it, man.
I think what you guys are saying should hold huge weight in the conversation, because there's a lot of older men that don't want to be looked to. They don't want the the responsibility of that. They're like, I'm trying to, they want to live their life. They want to be, and if you happen to pick up something, that's cool, kind of thing, and I think that's what you're really speaking to, because when you settle in and you say, well, I've got to live a life that does create a path, that does give, signs this way or that way. People say, well, who are you?
Yeah, man.
You know, what makes you think, that you, and it's really not about that. It's really not about that. You can teach from your failures sometimes better than your successes.
Mm.
Sometimes you can say, man, I fell headlong into this ditch, right? I fell, man, I messed up so bad right here. And I had to recalibrate and rethink how I approach things because of this experience. Now, here's some areas I've done well in. I've been able to, but I think sometimes, the older generation, says figure it out on your own because they may have to tell you how they stumbled in order to help you forward. And
Mhm.
there's a lot of people, and I'm not saying this is everybody, I'm not saying that. So don't hear what I'm not saying, right?
Mhm.
I'm saying that there is a group of people that said, you know what, man, it was so hard for me. Like you said, it was so much hell making it to heaven that
Yeah,
I
more.
just I don't want to tell you about this stuff. I don't want to unpack some of these bags that I've tossed, away. I don't want to say, so when you get people that say, yeah, this was really tough for me and this is why, they are, in their mind, they feel like they're risking something because they don't really know that this is what you're asking for. This is what you're asking for. And I'll give you one more example. I remember when my wife, asked her grandparents who had been married for, I don't know, at that time, like 55 years. She said, how did you do it? You know what they said to her? Just do it.
Yeah,
That's what they said.
yeah.
Like, just do it. Like, what? That's your answer? You just figure it out.
Yeah.
You
I
just
mean,
do it.
every single day of being married is different than the day before. Like it just is what it is. It's a new day. And I think there's power in every single generation figuring out where they need to be humble. Because for
Mm.
us as millennials, it's very easy for us to say, "Oh no, we are the bridge point and everything on that side of the bridge is wrong. That's
Right.
why we rejected it."
Right.
And now we are the starting point for the things that are good. And thus, everybody who comes after us has a better shot and that sort of thing. And so I think every generation will figure out ways and times and situations where, hey, this is a pitfall of my generation. This is a pitfall of people who were born during this time frame. And then within that, being able to see, here's my flavor of it. Here's what I bring to the table. Here's how I've maybe gotten this wrong, gotten this right. And I want to echo what you said, but maybe a little different. T. Um, there is a back and forth because I think if in being a male, it's kind of taught that you should be looking up to other men who are older, and for somebody like myself, and I want to get very very specific here because I don't want to incorporate anybody else's story into mine. There's some psychologist someplace is charting all of this out because it stems back to the fact that my old man was not a good dude. We'll just go ahead and say it like that. And so I've always questioned the paradigm of the necessity of looking to somebody who's older just because they're older. And then I got into ministry and started working with a bunch of Gen Xers. And if you're watching this, we have had this conversation in person. I've said these things to your face. It took a loudmouth, brash person like me to step into their environment and to start calling out all of the toxic stuff that I saw creeping around. And sometimes I got it wrong too and was very toxic in doing that. Trust me. I was not free from doing that, but it got me thinking, do I really care about the fact that my list of older guys that I can look to for sage wisdom, that I can look to, that I don't really value that, and I don't really care to. I care about listening to a person's experiences. That's what I care about.
Right.
And
Right.
sure, somebody who's older may have more experiences, but I think there's a fundamental flaw personally in specifically looking for that older generation. Now, that being said, for the sake of being aware of my own biases, my own track record, that's why I laid it out the way that I did. My own track record could dictate very easily that because of that, I am biased against a particular perspective or point of view. I just think that there are fundamental aspects of the human existence that transcend these different aspects of the conversation, and the different aspects of the conversation are merely avenues for larger topics to become very, very evident and clear.
And yeah, I definitely respect that, because I do think in that regard, it is based off of your upbringing. You know what I mean? My dad was in the house. I won't say he was a bad dude, but it was just things I just knew weren't right, especially when I hit teenage years. Started thinking about women, wanting to be a husband. My dad wasn't married to my mom. What does a husband look like? Does it look like you have two women? Does it look? I was confused. And so I put it this way. Okay, I do this as a human experience. I think the beautiful thing about being able to create, being able to produce something, no matter what gender, sex you are, you have the ability to create. There's still this part of you that, in that exploration of creation, that you own. Like right now, I am accepting that I'm a pioneer on what I'm doing on YouTube. This marriage between God and gaming, the way I'm doing it, I don't see a lot of examples of it. So there is a excitement that I get to bridge something totally new. I get to go through hell and high water. I get to fight all these hard fights. But there's this part of me that's like, well, how does this look? Who can I look to show me that this road that I'm going down is not insane? That's just me talking about career and hobby. I think that's there for life. You're like I said, the millennials, we're fine with saying we're going to trail a new path. Even in our churches, we're going to do something different. We're going to worship different. We're going to express ourselves different. We're going to preach different. But there is still that part of you that's like, well, it's what I'm doing too crazy, too far-fetched, because has this really ever been done? And it kind of looked at someone as a reference to ask questions. Because I'm still going to do what I got to do. Doesn't change what I have to do. But it's more of it'd be nice to look at that. It'd be nice to pick someone's mind. I guess if you would, an affirmation, if you would. And I think that's what I was talking about while I was sitting with, and someone who is a spiritual father, a pastor to me, and I was grateful for him. I was like, as someone who's older than me, I told him thank you, because he's been consistent. I've been able to, for lack of better words, not feel crazy about wanting to be married to one woman. Right? I'm not crazy for wanting to be a man of integrity and excellence when it concerns my relationship with God. That's not crazy to want to fight hard for that, to fight every crime of addiction and lust in my life with fervent, because I want to please God such a way, because I do care about people behind me who are looking, right? To someone now to go the other way with that, right? I'm someone now speaking to someone younger. Kevon's on the screen. Well, I met Kevon. I told him, I was like, hey, bro, it was probably the weirdest thing I ever said. I said, I'm responsible for you. And what I meant by it is how I lived my life. Because I knew the minute me and him started talking, I said, this dude's going to be around me. I don't know how this is going to play out. I think it was my first day on the job. we're eating at the craziest place at a lake. People had a lake in their backyard. It was a very crazy experience. But I'm like, yeah, God's called me to this young man, and how I live is important. I ain't gonna say what that relationship looks like, but because the way this relationship started, he started picking my mind. What do you think about this? What do you think about this and this and this? And that was our whole school year. And I realized real quick how I lived mattered, because he's going to do what he's going to do, but there needs to be a reference point. He needs to know when all doors are closing because of integrity, that, yeah, you can still stand in your integrity and still go forward. He needs to know that the things he's talking about are not crazy. The passion that he has to want to be used at a young age is not a crazy thing, because I was his age feeling the same thing. And, you know, it's like we don't want to continue to blame and point fingers, right? But, yeah, I agree 100% with what Ant said, is that it hurts because what I've seen with my eyes, I'm not trying to say it's for every person who's older than me. It's like they just don't want that. It's like he said perfectly, I don't got time. I'm trying to do my own thing. Or it's the embarrassment of, you know, I want to clarify a couple things, because Ant's not the only person. I have a father-in-law who I talked to this morning that I have great respect for, and I don't know if he's watching, but he was an example. So I want to clarify that too, because he's been a powerful example. He's a man of God, you know, raised a credible woman of God that I'm married to, you know. But there's this thing of, well, I want you to see that, so I want to talk about it, right? And I get that. I relate to that. So if you're a person, I get that, because, man, having bro in the house, I'm like, I didn't want him to see that. But I gotta talk about that.
You know, one of the most dynamic things that I continue to be amazed by is, I think it's 1 Corinthians chapter 11, the first verse, right, where Paul's saying, you know, imitate me as I imitate Christ, right? And when I first read that, I'm like, okay, like that's pretty cool. But, you know, as I continue to dive in it, and you know, we've been talking about it for the 2 years that I've been with Sure Foundation.
That's crazy.
It needs to come up. Yeah.
Fast.
It's like, man, it's such a powerful thing, because I think TCU had said it earlier that a lot of times our reference point is, you do this because I told you, or you do this because I'm the older, right? I had the experience, right? You follow me because I've been there, I've done that, right? You always hear that type of verbiage, but I think that in this walk of Christ, it's more powerful than experience, right? Not to say that you throw experience away, but it's in conjunction with my relationship with God, right? You're not following me because it's me. You're following me because I'm going after Christ, right? And when I'm going after Christ, there has to be a change. There has to be a transformation. And there's like a radiance that you will see, right? And from there, that's what I want you to follow. And I think that for older people, and even myself, right? Because there's kids that look up to me, and there's people behind me as well, right? That's the part that we gotta grasp. It's not to, it's the part is, we all have to follow the rubric that God has given us, right? And that's Jesus Christ. And from there, that is how we can be able to bridge these gaps, and that is how we can be able to fill in these holes, right? And then there is some relatability, right? Because I feel like the follow me is personal. Hey, follow me, because there's a relationship here, right? I trust that you can trust me, that I'm going to be going after Christ, right? And so being able to have that strengthens the bridge, right? Because of the relationship, because of the relatability, because of the different experiences that happens, right? Like TC was saying, and even Apostle, man, I feel like sometimes Apostle be like trying to copy me. You know what I mean? It's like he's like too much like me.
Oh Lord, what the? What the?
but but it's just like, like that is how we connect. And then saying like, you know what, some years ago I was right there, right? In that situation, I used to do that same thing. But here's how, as I followed Christ, how I was able to figure
Right.
this out, and this is how, you know what I mean. So I think that that's the secret to the sauce, right? That's what enhances the seasoning. That's the puree that you put on top of there, because it's a lot of times our experiences is like we were saying earlier, is our trauma, right? We can't really teach
Mm.
that. We can't really continue to spread that. A lot of the experiences that I had heard is something that they had to figure out or they had to adapt to because of something that was misinformed or misled, right? And so, what is the best way? And so that's why I'm like that verse. It continues to like spin my mind. It continues to keep the wheels rolling because it's just so dynamic.
Yeah. Listen, y'all. I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. So, chat, I want to give you some, like, I don't know, like 1.5 minutes. Some weird random time, right? For you to get out your last thoughts, because we want to hear, gentlemen. I like this. I felt like on a personal level, this was a very impactful stream because I don't know if we have a solution, but I see a solution in front of me because I think all of us in our respective roles in our age offer powerful value. I think, not to summarize like this, for Ant, the humility to say, I want to take the time and teach. That's why I would say if I wanted to encourage someone who's older, who wants to connect that bridge, is the time. And this might be scandalous. The method, it's okay to fumble through because you might find people just want to have a conversation. So what I mean by that is the conversation starter, not just dismissing it, not just saying, oh, okay, we ain't gonna talk about that or go on somewhere, right? The humility to say, okay, what are you saying? And let me try to understand. And if I don't understand, at least I'm taking the time to listen. For us, Joe, I think you said something powerful about humility too. Is that it's very easy to look forward and then look back and say, "Oh, that was all wrong," but to have enough humility to say, "You know what? Everything behind me wasn't too bad. There were some lessons there, and going forward, maybe I can teach these lessons better." Right? And so, really trying to marry that bridge between not letting your trauma overtake you, not letting that pain, not letting that, the abuse of a past generation totally be negative, but at the same time saying, hey, there's some things that I can take that wasn't so bad from this previous generation. I like the humility aspect in that. Kevon, I just think overall, I think that was just powerful for you speaking from your side of saying, hey, it's needed. We're not just toys to be shined. We need direction. I'm not meant to be held. Let me, we're talking in church. I think one of our sermons is like talk about letting it shine. Letting God's light shine, not being damned. Let me shine. Give me those opportunities. And yeah, let Christ be the reference point. Because I might need to ask some questions. So I think we all could come together and offer something powerful. Like I said, I don't feel like I have the answer, but I feel like this is a powerful start. If you could just get people to do what we did in this 2-hour time, have conversations, I think people might come out more impacted, more different. I don't know. Maybe I'm just being too optimistic.
So, one of the things that I'd like to leave with is, and we kind of touched on this ish, but more in like this is how younger people are being pushed down sort of way. But we look at the fact that everybody on this stream is in ministry. Several people in the comment section are in ministry, each one with a unique perspective, each one with a unique way of being able to care for other people or do what they're going to do in ministry. And the whole thing of Paul and Timothy came up several times. When we realize that section of scripture that we have been talking about is not merely an instruction manual for a pastor, but these are the qualities that you should be fostering in the church. Seems like a subtle change, but it's big. It's really big. And when we take that spirit out of the camp of, okay, this is a rubric, this is the epitome for what it means to be a pastor, to be a minister, to be a man of God, to be a woman of God, and we put that into the camp of, this is what you should be bringing about in the lives of the people that you are ministering to, that you are caring for, that you are shepherding. Suddenly, we are all given a template to be able to work off of, and a piece to be able to say, okay, how does that look unique to my situation? How does that look unique to my circumstance? And unfortunately, that sometimes dies on the vine of it doesn't look enough like how it looks like in the West. You are not the pastor of a congregation. You are not a pastor in a brick and mortar sense. You do not have the conventional road to ministry. You are too young. You are too old. You do not have the right color skin. You are not the right gender. Whatever that, it's all arbitrary. That's why we can all put that pin in a different place and be able to have very valid experiences about how even those closest to us have told us we are not enough. We are not good enough. We are not enough of something, because the emphasis was taken off of what should you be doing and put onto what makes you qualified in my eyes, from my perspective. And one of the ways that I sometimes I think it's a great blessing, other times it gets me into a lot of trouble, but what somebody else thinks of me, I have built up enough calluses that what somebody else thinks of the path that I'm walking, oh, you got to prove that I should care about what your opinion of me is. Like, that's for better or for worse, because a lot of people have had a lot of opinions, and oftentimes it's born out of this much information when the actual picture is this. And so I can love on somebody. That doesn't mean that I give them the real estate to be able to judge where I'm at. And so carry forward bravely, unabashedly, for the young and the old, from the conventional to the non-conventional. Carry forward bravely that desire to foster those things in the people that you are caring for, the people that you are around, and in the way that your situation dictates that you are going to, because each one of us is unique. And when we look at the connective tissue of the kingdom of God, when we look together at the body, precepts, stereotypes, artificial lines, all be damned. Every single solitary one of them. The Bible standard is what matters. You can have people who are rooting you on, people who correct you, people, all of those kinds of things. but it has to be, but keep it in the realm of, does this person have the right authority and knowledge to be able to speak into that? And if they don't, move forward.
Amen. Your closing comments?
Yeah, I'll say this really quick, and
Mm.
I agree 100%. With what Joe was saying, and I would just, in addition to that, I was sitting here thinking, and this is the way my mind works. You know, uh, I think it's James chapter 1, and I believe it's verse 19 that says, "Be slow to speak, quick to hear, slow to wrath." And that's one of my I guess I would use that as one of those verses that really guides me. And so when I thought about that verse and I thought about this conversation, I began to think, okay, so number one, we have to be willing to listen. If we're not willing to listen to each other, then forget it, you know. But
Mhm.
then after we've listened, we've got to get clarification. We've got to get an understanding. Because if we don't understand each other, then what do we have? And once we understand, then I think we're able to connect,
Mm.
because that's where the connection comes, is because I do understand where you're coming from. And from the older perspective, being above my 50s, you know, then if need be, I can offer correction or redirection, you know, because I feel like, okay, we're connected, we understand. So now, if I do have some advice that will help this person, I can offer that. But then to encourage them to be who God's called them to be, to encourage them to go forward with confidence, not to make them tentative or make them fearful that I'm going to mess up. Because I think when we do that, we don't see the greatness and the brilliance and and all of the things that could be accomplished by a younger generation that is not bound by the issues that I have. Right? I think Joe said it earlier, and I agree. Even some of the most well-meaning, godly, quote unquote, godly men and women still have their issues, right? And those issues can cause us to put those issues on other people, right? And we have to be aware of our own biases, be aware of our own issues, and be ready to say, "Hey, that's me. That's not you," and I don't want to constrict you because of my issue. And so, I think that's what I would leave, for those listening in this conversation. Say we gotta listen, we gotta connect, we gotta understand each other.
Amen. Good stuff. Well, um, as we land this plane, couple quick announcements. Listen, if you guys like Let It Rip, we are here every Saturday, 7:30 MST. And Joe, what time is it for standard time?
9:30.
9:30. You guys can always catch us here. Listen, even after the stream is over, you can still comment. We want to hear from you. You can still ask questions. You can message us. We're totally available on the page at all times. Want to do some shout outs real quick. Kevon, I know there's a couple things you're doing. Do you want to tell people where they can further find you? 'Cause I know you're starting to really get into more stuff. And first off, let me back up. I want to say thank you for being with us today. We actually, he's going to be with us one more time. We have another stream that's going to be powerful coming up for you guys. But sir, we still want to say thank you for making the time to spend time with us and share your insight. But yeah, where can people find you, man? What you up to? What you cooking?
Um, Sure Foundation at 1350 Chamber. That's what I'm saying.
Look at him.
No, I don't have much of a social media presence at this moment. That is something I'm being challenged to continue to grow. I'm really not on social media. I like to just go out and do stuff. But I do have a social media platform. It's called the Drizzle Zone. It's a platform that I started actually in COVID. It was something that was kind of playing on a nickname, but I found a way to turn it into a ministry platform for me. I think the verse that I had to start that off was Deuteronomy 32. I want to say verse 3 and 4. Where it talks about the dew of the earth. And other translations is drizzle, and so it's like the drizzle zone, getting God's provision and information and teaching through that. And so
Okay.
that's where you can find me on Instagram and Facebook, the drizzle zone. So that's where you can. But
What
you will
about you? What about you
try to get my stuff.
co-hosting Motivational Mondays? Because people see you on there too. So you're
Yeah,
pretty big presence on that.
yeah. We've been doing that on Mondays, so thank you
Yeah.
for reminding me about that. That's something that we do every Monday, starting at 8 a.m. in the morning. I'm with my man A Dub up there. You know what I mean? We do
All
that.
right, Dub.
Yeah. uh,
I'll leave you alone. All right, I'll leave you alone. Go ahead.
yeah, we do that, and please get on. We always we feel encouraged and feel led by God to encourage people in the start of their week. Taking what the Lord has given us throughout the week, or just even that morning to encourage, build up, and motivate people to to do the will of God and to let them know that they are loved and appreciated and that they are noticed. And so we always have that every Monday starting at 8 a.m. I don't know what that is in other time zones. I know Kenji, he gets on almost on time, but I think that might be like 10 for him. Yeah, that's what we have going on every Mondays.
Sounds good, man. I'm looking forward to Drizzle's on for real, man. 'Cause I know you've been talking about that for a while. Because some stuff he has on there, guys, is pretty good. So definitely make sure you check it out. And Motivation Mondays is always a banger. Joe, man, I know you got Kingdom on the road. You got different stuff, but is there anything else you want to drop that people could find you? That you got different passions on that you might want them to come check you out.
So on the ministry side, every week on Buddy Walk with Jesus, we're walking through the book of Acts. We're in the Acts project. We've been for the last couple of months, and trying to highlight that it was always built into the fabric of the movement of Christianity for there to be a multiplicity of expressions of worship. I also have on the entertainment side a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles channel over on YouTube, Shell Shock, a TMNT series, where we're talking about everything Turtles over there.
Let's go. Yeah, I checked that out myself still. And where can I find you, man?
Well, yeah, you talked about Monday motivation with uh, Kevon. Man, we enjoy doing that every Monday. I'm on Kingdom on the Road with Joe, so and then I'm doing a Tuesday prayer series with Alex Jimenez from he's right here from Aurora, Colorado. We've been teaming up to teach on prayers from the Bible, and so we just been breaking down prayers in the Bible. We looked at Nehemiah's prayer. We looked at um, Daniel's prayer, and I think we're going to look at the Lord's prayer in John chapter 17, where Jesus prayed for himself, the disciples, and for us. And so we're going to break that down. That's going to be a powerful a teaching and exploration of the prayers in the Bible. And then, of course, YouTube, Anthony Wilson. Um, uh, if you type in prayer and Anthony Wilson, obviously, I guess I pop right up.
Yep.
That's a blessing because it makes it easy for you to find. We do prayers every morning. Actually, I didn't do it this morning, but I will get it posted because this morning was I don't know, it was a lot going on. But we do prayer every morning, and then we'll post different stuff. And so, Facebook, same thing, Anthony Wilson or Love Thy Neighbor, whichever one you find, it should come up. So yeah, pretty much on all social media platforms.
Let's go. And of course, so you can find me, Pastor TC, literally by my name on TikTok. And you can now find me a couple changes on YouTube. I have now converted my channel into a shorts channel for gaming and sermons. So you just need a quick word on the go while you enjoy some gameplay. Follow me at God and Gaming, and that's on YouTube. And I just started a new channel as of yesterday. There's no content there yet, but you can find me at Pastor TC, the Gaming Pastor, and that's where you'll find more of my long form content as we talk about various topics of spiritual growth. Also, if you're here in Colorado, predominantly in the world, Colorado, come visit us at Share Foundation, 1350 Chambers, Suite 107. And I think, hope I'll butcher this up, zip code 80012. 11. Okay, I'm thinking about wrong. I'm thinking about my zip code. 80011, literally right around the corner from church. And so come check us out. We would like to see you. There's a lot of great teaching here. And yeah, with that being said, guys, this has been a powerful stream. Joe, go ahead and give us our farewell.
All right. Thank you all for joining us for another edition of Let It Rip. As Pastor TC said, even after the fact, we do pay attention to the comment section. So go ahead, drop any comments, any questions, any concerns about anything that we talked about today, and we will get back to you as advertised. Kevon will be back with us next week as we go through volume 2 of Misunderstood or Misused Scripture. So be sure to tune into that one because it is sure to get spicy. But guys, until next week, we want you to remember 2 very important things: that you are prayed for and you are loved deeply. All right. Peace, y'all.